everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of 10 to Life with me, Annie Elise. Okay, the case we're talking about today, guys, you know the expression, loose lips sink ships? I feel like that's very applicable in today's case because this kind of was like the perfect crime, the perfect murder. Two people were involved. It seemed like they were going to get away with it. They had gotten away with it for years until someone decided to talk. And they just started kind of like talking a little bit with their partner, not realizing that so much of this was recorded, which, don't worry, I'm going to show you that wild footage as well. But they probably would have gotten away with this if it weren't for this one person who was involved just, what's the expression? Not like flapping your lips. What is it? Is that it? Maybe that is it. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, could have got away with it. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, but too bad you didn't. So we're going to go through all of it. There is some wild footage I want to share with you, and let's jump right in. "85-year-old Anthony Tomaselli was a retired barber and a father of three. Now, back in 2015, he had glasses, he had a full head of white hair, and he also had three children. He had 59-year-old mary-beth, 58-year-old Linda Roberts, and a son named Charles, who was a couple of years younger than his sisters. Now, Anthony was a widower, but he ended up getting a second chance at love when he met a woman named Shirley Shannon back in 2004. The two of them dated for a really long time, and it was kind of very much one of those cases where everything sort of just clicked into place, She got along well with the family, which we know is so important if you're remarrying, once the older kids are in the picture, and trying to make sure that you all like vibe and gel. Because at that stage of your life, you can't just think about who makes you happy, but you need to think about who makes everyone happy. And Shirley was that for Anthony. The two of them never had a wedding, and they never formally got married, but they were together long enough that Florida recognized them as a common law married couple. So all in all, Anthony had a pretty great, pretty happy life. Things were good. He had Shirley, he had a lot of hobbies, he would go golfing, he would watch the sunset on the beach, all of the beautiful things. And Anthony lived in Palm Harbor, Florida. Truly like a land of golf courses, beaches, a true oasis. So it worked out pretty well for him. He spent his days doing the things that he loved, and then every night he would follow the exact same routine. First, he would read his prayer cards, which I think is just like so incredibly endearing. Then he would make his favorite cocktail, a vodka and Diet Coke, which I gotta say is not the most popular combination, but I've had those quite a few times and they're really, really good because, I'm a Diet Coke lover, but like vodka, Diet Coke, they're pretty good. But he would have one just to like unwind before bed. But sadly, in the early spring of 2015, Anthony's life got a little bit smaller and a little bit darker because the love of his life surely passed away. And you see this a lot when someone loses their spouse or their long-term partner, right? Like their health starts to then take a turn for the worse as well once they're gone, kind of like The Notebook. And the same happened with him. In particular, he began experiencing some cognitive decline, and it's kind of started off small where he wasn't able to remember things, not being able to think as clearly as he used to, but it was more of like a smaller scale, not anything too drastic. Now, the worst part was that with Shirley gone, there was now nobody living at home with him, nobody to take care of him now that his situation was starting to get pretty bad. But he did have the next best thing. He had his two daughters, mary-beth and Linda, and they would check in on him regularly. They would make sure that he was okay. And in doing so, it really didn't take much time at all for them to start to notice Anthony's problems during these check-ins. It was very obvious that he was getting confused and he was forgetful. So this meant that mary-beth and Linda needed to make a tough decision, whether or not to put him into a nursing home or figure out some type of other care solution. That way, though, in a nursing home, he would have a lot of caretakers. He would have a lot of doctors around. If he ever got sick or got hurt, there would be somebody around 24/7 to help get him the care that he needed. The two of them couldn't give him that kind of attention, but professionals could. The problem was with that is when mary-beth and Linda told Anthony their plan, he didn't like it. In fact, he told them that he absolutely refused to go to any kind of assisted living facility. And it sounds to me like maybe he didn't realize how bad his health was and how bad things were getting. I mean, maybe he was in denial. Maybe he was just stubborn and didn't want to leave his home. I will just share personally, my dad was the same way towards the end. We wanted so desperately to get him into an assisted living care facility, and he lived in a different state by himself, and he refused. He wouldn't. We even then tried to get him to move back to California and be with us and be nearby, and he just wouldn't. So, like, I think that there's an option here of either Anthony being in denial, not realizing things were so bad and kind of being like, I'm fine, leave me alone. Or just truly being like, no, this is where I'm going to stay. I'm not leaving. I refuse to get help from other people. Very much my dad, Mike O'Brien, and kind of like, I've got this. I'm doing it on my own. And that's what Anthony told his daughters. He told them that he was perfectly capable of taking care of himself. He was not leaving his home. But Linda and mary-beth didn't let up, and it didn't take long for everyone to get into a situation where they just couldn't get along at all. I mean, there was constant arguing. Linda and mary-beth weren't willing to compromise or back down, but neither was their dad, Anthony. So all that was left to really do was fight. And I know sometimes when you're mad at someone and not getting along, the best thing to do is just, take a step back, cool off, give everyone a chance to cool down. But that really wasn't an option in this case, because the two women still went to their father's house every single day. They knew that he couldn't be left alone for much longer than that, and that they needed to constantly be checking in. So angry or not, they just kept heading over to the house. Then, while they were at Anthony's house, it was inevitable that they would just have another argument. This was also happening every day, and it just didn't seem like there was an end in sight. But on the morning of March 6th, 2015, Linda and mary-beth woke up early in the morning after spending the night at their dad's house. But when they woke up, that's when they found Anthony lying on his couch, unresponsive. So Linda called 911 to let them know what she and mary-beth had discovered, and she told them they had tried to revive him, they tried to do CPR, but nothing was working. And then after the first responders rushed to the home, they also just saw Anthony right there lying on the couch. Linda was doing chest compressions on him, and so much so, so desperate trying to save him that they had to pull her off of him. And the paramedics then stepped in and did what they could, trying to save his life, but none of it worked. Anthony had unfortunately already passed away. The good news in all of this was that it looked like he died peacefully. He was lying on the couch. His eyes were closed. It looked like he had just fallen asleep and then, hadn't woken up. There were no signs that he was in pain and definitely no signs that he had suffered. So it made sense that this was due to natural causes, and that's what the death was ruled as, especially given the fact that he was 85 years old and had, a lot of health problems, a whole host of health problems. But still, it was a lot for the family to process. Even when you know that a death is coming and you have time to prepare for it, it can feel very different once it happens. And it's almost like the reality sets in that moment, even though you feel as though you've had time to prepare for it. And again, I'm just going to draw on my own experience here. Many of you guys know my dad ended up passing away this last November, and he was put into hospice for a few weeks, and we knew what was coming. We knew what was happening, and we knew that it was end of life, but still, that moment that it happened, nothing prepares you for that. Nothing does. Even now, the aftermath of grieving and trying to cope with it and have those memories set in, it just, nothing prepares you for that. And sorry, I didn't mean to make this about me and and go down that road. It's just, I can't help but see the parallels in this case. Two sisters, me and my sister, we have our brother, and it's just very similar. Now, one thing that made this especially difficult for the girls was the fact that Shirley had only passed away a few weeks before Anthony. So mary-beth and Linda were not only grieving her, this woman who they had known, for so long over the years and kind of even viewed as a stepmom, but now at the same time, they were also grieving their dad. The only silver lining in all of this was that Anthony wasn't in pain anymore. There was no more fighting about the retirement homes, no more daily check-ins, no more arguing, no more turmoil. He was finally at peace. So they ended up selling Anthony's home, and with that sale, they made a little over $120,000. They then decided to split that money 3 ways, 1/3 for mary-beth, 1/3 for Linda, and the remaining third for their younger brother. And then after that, it was kind of, life goes on. You grieve, you go through the motions, you plan a funeral, you do all the things. But eventually you settle into a new sense of normal. I'm still waiting on mine. Now, for mary-beth, who was single at 59 years old, this meant that her new normal was getting back into the dating scene. Why not? Why not? Let's go out. Let's meet new men. Let's try finding love. And a few years after Anthony's death in 2018, sometime around August or September, mary-beth did find love. She went into a bar and she met a man named Anthony Marsh, coincidentally also named Anthony. And since there are two guys named Anthony for me to talk about, I'm going to call Anthony Marsh Tony, just so that it doesn't get confusing. Anthony is the dad and Tony is the man that mary-beth met at the bar. So Tony and mary-beth hit it off, and before long they started sleeping together. Now, I don't know if they formally dated. I don't know if this was like a boyfriend-girlfriend type relationship, if it was more of a friends with benefits situation. She was much older in life. I don't know. But this next part gets weird. I mean, seriously, guys, it gets so weird. So mary-beth lived with Linda, her sister. So they were roommates, basically, on top of being sisters. And while mary-beth was seeing Tony, she would occasionally bring him back to her place, right? I mean, let him spend the night, normal stuff when you're with someone. But what's not normal is that after a few weeks or months, I'm not sure the exact timeline here, Tony kind of changed his mind and decided he had a thing for Linda, who, by the way, was married and also the sister of the person that he was already sleeping with, mary-beth. But for whatever reason, he thought it would be a good idea to start sleeping with Linda too, which he did. Now, on its own, that is just wild enough, right? I mean, it's generally considered a bad move to date a friend's boyfriend or their ex, even if they're done, because of the potential jealousy and angry feelings. But for now, two sisters to get into that situation while living together, and one of them is married, it sounds like a recipe for disaster and so much drama. But I mean, who knows? Maybe mary-beth and Tony were not that serious. Maybe she wasn't love-struck after all. Maybe they were open enough that she was going to allow her sister to come into the fold. Maybe Linda and her husband were also open too. I don't know. I'm just guessing, and I don't have a lot of the details on exactly how everything played out. But it does sound very toxic and very messy to me. But what do I know? So Tony was with mary-beth for a while. Then he was with Linda. And I don't know if he ever saw both sisters at the same time, or if maybe he broke up with mary-beth before he got with Linda. But what I do know is that before you knew it, it was now February 13th, 2019, the day before Valentine's Day. And on that day, something major happened. Tony reached out to the police. And he did that because apparently not too long ago, he had a conversation with Linda. And she had said some very, very disturbing things to him, things that he could not ignore. Now, the good news is that he had a recording of that conversation, so he wasn't just coming to the police with hearsay or gossip. He had physical evidence of what she had said. And Tony explained to the police that one day he had just been casually talking to Linda, and she told him that after all of these years, she still felt unsettled about the way her father had died. She said she was having these vivid dreams about him where he would just stare at her. And then she just blurted out that she couldn't take it anymore. She had to tell the truth. And take a listen to this.
To put like 6 of them in a little bit of, because he had a drink every night anyway.
Who had a drink every night?
My dad. I said, just put them in a little bit of alcohol. 6, 7 of them. And stir him up, because he was waiting for a drink.
A beverage, alcohol?
Yeah, vodka. So, what does she do? She makes a drink this big.
mary-beth?
Yes. Instead of making a little drink, she makes a big drink. Because the 7 halcyon, I think it was halcyon that he was taking, which are very strong, would have been plenty enough to just let him go to sleep and sleep peacefully. So she makes a drink this big. Well, he can't drink a drink this big. So I looked at her and I said, you fucked up. I said, so she already handed him the drink. He takes about 4 swigs of it, 5. And in about 15 minutes, his hands started shaking. He was dropping his prayers that he was saying, his holy cards. But I knew he didn't have enough in his system.
Enough what?
Of the halcyon.
What is halcyon?
Halcyon's a sleeping pill. It's strong. It's as strong as you can take.
Wait a minute. Your father was taking halcyon on his own even though he's losing his mind?
No, the doctor was giving it to him. He was prescribing it to him.
to your father.
Yes.
But your father was overusing the halcyon.
He told the doctor, I'm going to take what it takes to put me to sleep at night.
And his doctor said, okay, do what you got to do?
Yeah. He spaked my head.
And then since you and mary-beth knew that he was overtaking it, you thought that would be the way, because it wouldn't be suspected that you gave him the halcyon because he was overdosing himself.
Right.
Okay. So that was your plan. So you would dissolve 7 halcyons in alcohol.
But instead of putting
Right.
2 shots in a cup of vodka, she fills the whole thing up with soda and all this other stuff.
Right, made like a real drink.
Yeah, and she hands it to him. So he took enough to knock him for a loop, really knock him for a loop. But this is very hard for me, Anthony.
I know.
I've never told anybody this.
I guess not.
And obviously, I would
you
deny it if you ever told anybody.
Why would I tell somebody? What good is it going to do? You said the body's cremated.
Yes, it's cremated.
Your father's cremated.
They've already been through an investigation. The police.
Who investigated?
The police were there.
The police of where?
Well, so let me tell you. He lay down on the couch.
Wait, this was 7 years ago?
4.
4 years ago?
Yeah.
You killed your father 4 years ago.
Do you have to say it like that?
Well, but
and
that's...
don't just say it to me, because it was my sister too.
And mary-beth.
Correct. We euthanized him. We didn't kill him.
Well, euthanasia is not legal.
Well, it is, because hospice does it all the time. They give you the lethal dose of morphine. I've seen it. I've done it myself.
So you think that if you take it upon yourself that your father is suffering and no medical... But he was at home. He wasn't taken to the hospital. You think it's upon your... Look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but did you really think it was upon yourself to decide whether he should be euthanized? I mean, they arrested that Jack Kevorkian guy.
He didn't want to go to the place that this beautiful place that he was going to go live in. Have his own little apartment.
He didn't want to go.
He didn't want. He refused to go.
But you told me, I asked you in the beginning of this if he asked for euthanasia, and you said no.
I know. It's a lot, okay? But there's more. Don't worry. Now, before I play the next clip, I do want to jump in and highlight how wild all of this is. I mean, how this woman would just sit down with her boyfriend or her F-buddy or whatever he was and just casually admit to killing her own father. And the way she kept talking about it, it was almost like she was talking about euthanasia. Like what she was doing was no different from when doctors assist their patients with end-of-life needs or pets or things like that. But of course, as we know, it was very different. I mean, first of all, because Anthony never consented. She said as much in the clip. I mean, there's a huge difference between murder and assisted end-of-life. And the biggest difference is about whether that dying person has a say in it or not. And again, sorry, not to draw on my own experience here, but... And again, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but without going into all of it, I will tell you this. So my dad had a very, very specific healthcare order or directive in his healthcare of, I do not want life-sustaining measures. I do not want feeding tubes, artificial intervention, nothing like that. And my dad was also very much of the mindset of end of life on your own terms, not in a depressed way, but I don't want to suffer. If I don't have my mind, my body, I want to go. And we didn't do end of life, but ultimately, because he didn't want a feeding tube, that's what led to that and all of these things. But anyway, my point is, when all this was happening with our father, we did start researching end of life and different methods and how could we make sure that he's not suffering and that we can abide by his wishes. And one of the biggest things with end of life in the states where it is legal, assisted end of life, is that they have to be, not only do they have to consent and acknowledge it, they have to be of sound mind. They have to be coherent. They have to be acknowledging it, so much so that in many situations, if not all, they have to actually administer that drug themselves to be fully cognizant, fully aware of what's going on. So it's not even in our situation, it's not we know our father wouldn't want to live like this. He couldn't remember who we were most of the times. He didn't have control of his body. Again, I won't go into all of the details, but we knew he didn't want to live like that. And so we were what can we do? And we couldn't even intervene that way, even if we wanted to, if he wanted to. We had to, just kind of let it play out. And then unfortunately he lost the ability to swallow. He didn't want the feeding tube. That was in his directive. So it ended the way it ended. But the whole reason of why I'm saying all of that is because even if you think you're helping someone, they have to be fully aware of it, so much so that they're either administering the drug, they're signing it off, they're consenting, and Anthony was not. Not to mention, when a doctor does step in and help someone along toward the end, they're doing that as a medical professional, someone who understands the dosages, the drugs, how to make it peaceful and painless. And you heard what Linda said in that video. Anthony didn't take enough of this to even die. He didn't have the peaceful death that he deserved. Now, in spite of all of that, she just kept trying to justify what she had done.
He may have 2 months left to live.
But there's been miracles in the past.
Okay, so what do you want me to do now? Go confess to the police?
I didn't say to do that. Only you know what will set you free.
Nothing will set me free.
You can't decide that a miracle of modern medicine couldn't have saved him and cleared his cancer out.
Never in a million years.
You can't decide that.
The doctor said it. He told me
Fuck
your
the doctor.
father's dying.
But he's not dead. You can't end his life. You know this. You know you can't end a life. You know it's murder.
Yes, I do.
That's murder. I look at you, little innocent you, and you've actually murdered a person in this world, and your own father to boot. I've never murdered a person, and I'm dangerous. I'm a dangerous individual. People start fights with me, and I don't just wrestle with them. I pound them into oblivion, and I've never murdered anybody. I can't believe it. I've even wanted to in the past. I've even
so
thought...
then why do you think now what are you going to do?
What do you mean?
That I've told you.
I can't believe that you murdered.
Not me. Me and my sister.
I can't believe
Don't
that
put it just on me. We made the decision together as a pack.
She's a dumbass. You're the ringleader. You know that. The first person to think, let's just euthanize him, was you. You know that. And she agreed.
No, it really wasn't.
And she agreed.
No, that's not true.
Oh, you both said it at the same time. You went
Actually,
1, 2,
did.
3, let's euthanize.
We both decided at the same time because actually, you don't know my sister. My sister has a temper 10 times worse than I do. You don't know my heart.
But why did she have a temper? Why was this ending his life anything to do with the temper? She was mad at him?
Yes, they had terrible arguments because he didn't want to go into Brookfield.
So she was mad at him when she murdered him.
Yeah, she was mad at him.
So that really is murder.
I talked to the doctor and I knew he was dying. But him and her had been fighting since Shirley died.
Who's Shirley?
The person he was with 20 years.
Shirley Tomaselli?
No, Shirley Shannon. He never married
Shirley
her.
Shannon?
He never married her.
Shirley Shannon?
Mm-hmm.
She never took his name?
They're not married.
Okay, so...
He lived with her for 20 years.
But here's the thing. You knew that he was going to die. Well, you say you knew he was going to die, but you don't really know. You heard from a doctor that he was going to die. Did you ever hear of a misdiagnosis? Did you ever hear that? Please tell me you've been in the medical profession. Have you ever heard of a doctor amputating the wrong leg?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard him saying, I'm sorry to tell you this, your father's got a...
What are you trying to do? Make me feel... What do you want me to do?
I'm just saying, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off.
Wrong.
I'm pissed off that you murdered your own father. And you said he was the greatest guy ever.
He was. That's why we did it because we
No,
loved
you
him.
said mary-beth was actually mad at him, so she was angry and she had a temper. She was happy to murder him for different reasons. True?
I wanted to put him out of his misery.
But she was mad at him. True?
Yeah, she was mad at him.
So it could be said that she did it with malice. You know what I mean? In a way. So maybe she's more to blame. Like she was mad and she's like, let's just kill him. I'm sick of his ass.
We didn't use the word kill.
Let's euthanize him.
We used the word put him out of his misery.
But she was mad at him. You just admitted it. You said, you don't know my sister. She's got a temper 10 times mine. And they were fighting and she was happy to pinch his nose.
I don't know if she was happy, but at the time, that was the only thing we could do at this point. See, you don't know if this ever got out and my family found out.
I'm not telling your family. What the fuck is that going to do? It's not going to bring him back.
Bring them back? Are you kidding me?
Right.
They would probably try to put us in jail.
Well, they will put you in jail for murder. I don't even think there's a statute of limitations on murder. And forget about a cremated body. That's not going to matter. If mary-beth tells them she pinched his nose and you put a rag in his mouth, that's enough.
Well, we're not going to say that. So now you can hate me even more.
I don't hate you. I pity you.
Now, I have to just say, it's crazy to me how open Linda was, how many details she was sharing, and also that she didn't catch on to the fact that she was being recorded. It's truly shocking. I mean, Tony was asking some very detailed questions, but she just kind of like kept singing like a canary, loose lips, just kept going. So anyways, the police now were in a bit of a tough spot because on one hand, yes, they had this confession. It came straight from Linda's mouth. She had murdered her father. But on the other hand, he had been dead for almost 4 entire years at this point. He also had been cremated. So there was no way to go back and do an autopsy and confirm what Linda had said in that video. So literally, the only evidence that the police and the investigators had against mary-beth and Linda was this confession. And it is so wild to me that if Linda had just kind of kept her mouth shut and not said anything, she might have gotten away with the entire murder. But instead, on the anniversary of Anthony's death, March 5th, 2019, the police arrested both mary-beth and Linda. And I say that it's the anniversary of his death because even though his body wasn't found until the morning of the 6th, the detectives believed that he did die the night before on the 5th. Now, since they still didn't have a lot of hard evidence, the police decided they needed to sit down both sisters for an interrogation. And of course, Linda had no idea that Tony had recorded her or told the investigators what she had done. So when they asked her for a statement, she told a very different story from what she had told Tony.
She yelled to me, "Something's wrong. Dad is not responding to me." So I went over there and I checked for a pulse. I felt a pulse, but wasn't thinking my father had a pacemaker in, so of course he's going to have a pulse. But in that instance, you're not even thinking. So I called Dr. Mazer on the phone, and I said, "My dad something's wrong, he's not breathing." In the meantime, I told my sister, "Call 911. So she called 911, they came, and I was doing CPR on him. And they came in and they said, I don't remember the exact words, but they said, "You need to get off your father now, we're going to continue." And I said, "Continue CPR on him, please." So anyway, they kind of lifted me off, put me on a chair and said, "You have to sit and you have to be quiet, we're going to work on your father." So they rolled him over, and
Is he on the couch or on the floor at this point?
I think they just rolled him over on the couch.
Okay, continue.
And they pulled up the shirt, and he was all black and blue. So when you're deceased, your blood, obviously, it's not circulating. But he still had the pulse going,
Right.
but that was the pacemaker
Pacemaker work.
making the pulse work.
Right.
So they get all his pills out of the cabinet that he takes, and they said he was short on his sleeping pills. So I said, well, I took him to the doctor several times, to Dr. Zion, and my father was very insistent that he was going to take 2 sleeping pills a night. And he told Dr. Zion that. And Dr. Zion looked at me and he said, well, that's really not the prescribed dose. And my dad said, I don't care, I'm taking 2 sleeping pills every night. So Dr. Zion said, okay, I will prescribe it that way for you. So when the police said they told my sister we're short, they made my sister count the pills, I said, just call Dr. Zion, you'll straighten the whole thing out, because it's noted in his computer that he was taking 2 pills a night. So they then put him on the floor, and they called the cremation place for my dad, had everything set up.
Right.
And they came out, put a flag on him, because he's a veteran, and took him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's it.
That's it?
Did he get, what happened? Is he buried somewhere or?
Is my dad buried somewhere?
Yeah, where?
He's interned at Sylvan.
Silvanabi.
Yeah,
Okay. You said you have kids, right?
one daughter.
One daughter. What do you usually, people make mistakes, and I get that, okay?
Now, I find this very interesting because Linda freely admitted that her dad might have died of a pill overdose, but she didn't know that the police knew that she had poisoned him yet. So she could have acted like he died of a heart attack or anything else for that matter. But for whatever reason, even while she was lying and pretending to be innocent, she put a grain of truth inside there, tucked away. Like maybe she realized the investigators had figured out the real cause of death. But still, she seemed pretty shocked once the police admitted just how much they really knew.
So, I don't think you're not being very honest with me right now.
What do you mean?
Because that's not what happened with your father, okay? And you know that, okay? You know that that's not what happened with your father. So I want you to tell me again, from the beginning, what happened with your father.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
The story, I'm going to lay it out for you. The story that you just provided to him is not what happened to your dad.
What happened to my dad?
I want you to go back and walk through this one more time. You need to pay attention to what's going on here, okay? What you said happened to your dad is not what happened to your dad. You understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Not especially. What has changed that didn't happen to my father?
Okay.
So this is what I want you to think about it real hard right now, okay? Because your father, that's not exactly how it happened, okay? And you know that, okay? So I'm going to give you, because when I'm asking you questions, I already know the answer to it, okay? And right now, I get it. You're nervous, you're keeping this in, and you're going with the same story that you had told the other officer when they originally came, but that's not what happened.
We've been doing an investigation, and that's not what happened, and you know that's not what happened. We're paying you the compliment of being upfront with you. You need to pay us the same compliment and tell us what actually happened.
Who is giving you information, other information?
Ma'am, I want to hear from you, okay? And I want to talk to you about it, okay? So, I know what happened, and I'm giving you the opportunity right now to talk to us and tell us your side of the story.
Eventually, though, Linda apparently figured out that Tony must have come forward to the police with that information. But again, she had no idea that he filmed the whole thing. So she tried to save face and say that Tony had a criminal background, and because of that, he just should not be trusted. But you see this time and time again, right? And I know I've seen this so many times play out, but someone always plays innocent. They come into an interrogation acting like they never did anything wrong, but eventually they break. They can't keep up the lies any longer. So Linda told the police that she and her sister did kill their dad. But Linda tried to make it sound like mary-beth was more to blame than she was in all of this. And it was kind of just like what she had said in that video that Tony recorded, because according to Linda, mary-beth and Anthony were fighting a lot before his death. And yes, everyone was fighting, but it was especially bad between him and mary-beth. So it sort of sounded like Linda was trying to plant the idea that mary-beth was the one with more motive in all of this, and maybe she thought that she would get off easier that way. I don't know. But what Linda didn't realize, or maybe she did realize but didn't think through the implications, was that while her interrogation was going on, the police were also questioning her sister Mary-Beth. And she, of course, had a very different story about who was at fault.
She said that if we were to do this, when my dad had a drink that evening, on that Thursday evening, that we would put, she thought, I think 15 of his sleeping pills, and I don't remember if they were capsules, honestly, or if they were tablets, put it in his drink, and he would make a big drink.
What was that? What kind of alcohol would that be?
Vodka and Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Okay. I believe.
He would drink this every night?
He would drink 2 or 3 every
2 or
night.
3 a night, okay.
And most nights he could hardly walk, and he was always falling in the bed. Falling, getting out, going into the bathroom. And she said we would put the sleeping pill in his
drink
when he asked for it about 9 or 10 o'clock. I can't remember about what time.
Fine.
First I would take him for a ride to the beach. He would want to go to Clearwater Beach every night. He had restless legs too. And I would drive him. Sometimes we would get to Sunset Point and then we'd turn around. Sometimes we'd get all the way to the beach and turn around.
Okay.
That was our nightly ritual.
Okay.
So I came back, and I don't remember if she was with that night in the car. And when we came home, it was premeditated.
Okay.
And so I am the one that put
The sleeping
the
pills.
sleeping pills in his drink.
Let me ask you this. Your daughter,
My sister I didn't realize it, my dad had 2 bedrooms.
okay.
And my daughter, my oldest daughter, was in the other bedroom, but my sister had given her a sleeping pill, so she was asleep.
So she can sleep through, so this...
Right, and her door was closed.
So she did not know any of this was going on, as far as you know?
No,
Okay. But you didn't know this at the time, but she told you subsequently that she gave her a sleeping pill?
Oh, yeah, she did
Okay.
tell me that
All right.
she gave her a sleeping pill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So-
Excuse me.
You're fine. So you...
I don't know a lot about those medications. I didn't realize that, that she thought it was going to be a small glass, a drink,
So
but
you-
I made him his regular one.
Regular one.
So her calculation was off.
Okay. So then what happened? Did you give him the... Where was
So
he at?
he was sitting on the couch,
Okay.
and he usually had his nightly prayers always. He said his
That's a nightly ritual that you would do. Okay.
What do you have, like little prayer cards?
yeah, prayer cards. Some of them were in Italian, some were in English, and he would
Okay.
say them every night.
Okay, so then go on.
So he did that, and we gave him his drink, and with her calculations, he would have passed away calmly.
Okay.
Yes, was it the hardest thing I ever did? Yes.
Okay.
However, the portion of the drink opposed to the medication
The ratio. Okay.
didn't work.
Okay.
Okay, so the glass dropped. It affected him, but it didn't pass away.
So what did he do?
So he was kind of struggling around. And at this point, you had seconds. After this wasn't planned. After this, what to do next.
Okay.
You did that the first thing would work.
I followed her lead.
Okay.
Okay.
And so she said, okay, now we had to be quiet. She said, let's put a pillow over Dad's face.
Okay.
Okay? And that didn't work because he was
So
strong.
who
He was
did?
strong.
Who put?
I don't remember which one of
Okay.
us put the pillow over his face.
And where was your dad when you were
He's
doing
on the couch.
So he was
In the living room.
Still in the living
Understood.
It was real quiet.
Okay.
I didn't know what, there wasn't any, no, I'm not smiling.
Understand.
And that wasn't working because he was very strong and he was pushing it off. And so she said, okay, the next thing we'll have to do is we have to get a washcloth and put it in his mouth, and we're going to have to hold his nose, and
Hold his
we
arms.
had to finish what we had started.
Okay. So at that time,
I believe I held his, I don't know how I held his nose, and I had to try to hold his arms down because
so you kind of pinned him down.
yeah,
Okay.
with
So
his hand on his
was he
wrist.
fighting? So he was fighting.
He was fighting, of course he was fighting to get breath.
Okay. So then,
But to this happened, I mean, it didn't take very long for this. Then once there was no air coming in, I don't know, a few minutes maybe.
okay.
I honestly, I didn't black out, but I can't, it was like an out of body experience. I can't remember exactly, but that's exactly how it went.
So then your sister grabbed the washcloth
Yeah.
and put it in his mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, and you held his nose
I
and arms.
Yeah, tried to
And
hold
he was
him
fighting the whole time?
Yeah, for maybe a minute or so. I honestly can't remember, sir, how long, but it wasn't very long. And he did have a pacemaker, and because she kept.
Now, those details are horrifying. I mean, mary-beth said it only took him a few minutes to die, but also she said that she couldn't remember how long it took. So how long did it really take? And I would imagine that it was more memorable for Anthony. I'm sure that for every single one of those last few minutes that he was alive, he was probably terrified and upset and understood that he was going to die at the hands of his own daughters. The betrayal, the audacity, it literally, you can't see right now, I have the chills because it angers me so much. It's like, if I could do anything, it would be to get a few moments back with my dad, and here these monsters were snuffing his life out. It's horrific. And that might be one of the worst parts of all of this, because mary-beth and Linda both talked about it like they were doing Anthony a favor, like they were mercy killing him, being so merciful. But what mercy is there in holding an old man's nose closed while he is fighting for breath? It is disgusting. Now, at least mary-beth seemed somewhat remorseful, and at one point, the detectives even allowed mary-beth to come into the room and talk with Linda alone in all of this. Take a listen.
On February 12th, Linda asked this male to come to her home, and when he got there, she told him that she, meaning Linda, and mary-beth had killed their father, and explained to him that they had euthanized their father. Because of Linda's statements, the male subject took out his cell phone and began to videotape and audio tape Linda's statements to him. Linda gave very specific details about how she and mary-beth killed their father. The next day, which was the 13th of February, the male contacted the sheriff's office and spoke with homicide detectives and conveyed what Linda had told him the previous day and provided us with a copy of the video and the audio tape. Detectives began an investigation and with the male's cooperation over the last few weeks, obtained additional recorded statements from Linda and mary-beth regarding their killing of their father. Both stated, in essence, that they had killed their father and that they had, quote, euthanized him because he had been ill. They said that he didn't want to go to an ALF or an assisted living facility, and that they knew that he would die sometime in the next couple of months, so they decided to euthanize him.
So both mary-beth and Linda were charged with first-degree murder. Now, this entire thing did not just happen at the flip of a switch. mary-beth and Linda didn't just decide to kill their dad on this spur-of-the-moment, right-there-on-the-spot moment. They planned this out, down to every last detail. Now, in terms of motive, I think that you could actually just take mary-beth and Linda at their word. In their interrogations, they said that they thought that they were mercy killing Anthony. They thought that he was too old, too sick, that he didn't have any sort of quality of life left. They figured rather than let nature take its course, they would just hurry things along and end things on his behalf. And it does seem believable that they might have thought that they were doing Anthony a favor in all of this. I mean, it's not like they had a huge inheritance. Sure, $120,000 split 3 ways. But with that, each sibling only got $40,000, which sure isn't nothing, but I also don't know if it's enough to murder somebody over. Especially if that someone is already getting close to the end of their life and you're going to get that inheritance before too long anyway. I'll also note that they did split the money with their brother Charles, who had absolutely nothing to do with this murder plot. He was completely innocent, and he lost his own father to his own sisters. But the one thing that does give me pause and make me question if there was in fact a mercy killing or not is that it came after all of those fights about getting Anthony into assisted living. I mean, clearly they thought that he was going to live for a little while, so I don't think that they would have been pushing him so hard to get into a nursing facility if they believed he only had a few days or a few weeks to go. So clearly there was some frustration involved, and maybe they felt like if Anthony wasn't willing to agree to move into a home, then neither one of them wanted to continue to be responsible for him and checking on him every day, constantly changing their plans and letting their lives revolve around him. I mean, that kind of caretaking is certainly hard. It wears you out, but obviously it doesn't justify murder. But I also wonder, were mary-beth and Linda just being selfish, like thinking that they weren't going to take care of him anymore and that if he wouldn't cooperate and work with professionals, then they were just going to hurt him for themselves? If Anthony had given in and agreed to go to a retirement home or a nursing care facility, would they have let him live? Maybe for months or even years longer? Now that's just speculation, but the point is, I don't think that they were necessarily intending to hurt him for money or for the thrill of it or for any of the reasons that you traditionally see a lot of the time. I do think that it was just about him not being in very good health and his daughters deciding to take matters into their own hands. And what's kind of eerie, at least to me, is that on Anthony's last day, they actually tried to give him a nice evening, sort of like they wanted him to go out on a high note. See, since Anthony loved sunsets on the beach so much, they even went out to the ocean and spent some time there. Now that night, mary-beth's daughter was actually staying over at Anthony's house, and she didn't have anything to do with the murder, but she was at the house, and she had no idea what her mom and her aunt had planned. In fact, mary-beth and Linda didn't even want the daughter to know. They didn't want her to be a part of this at all, and maybe they were even worried that if she did know, she would try to stop them, or she would report what they had done to the police. Who really knows? So because of that night, mary-beth and Linda prepared 2 drinks. One was for their father, and one was for the daughter. And in her daughter's drink, it did have sleeping pills, but just enough to make sure that she slept through the night and didn't hear the murder. Didn't get up and start poking around. Not enough to seriously hurt her or kill her, but still drugging her own daughter. Then, when it was time for Anthony to have his nightly vodka and Diet Coke, his daughters put what they believed to be a lethal dose of sleeping pills inside of it. But as mary-beth and Linda both admitted to in their confessions, Anthony didn't finish his drink. Instead of swallowing all of those pills and dying, he just got kind of groggy. And instead of maybe taking that as a wake-up call to stop what they were doing, they decided to double down. They decided, oh no, now the best idea and the next second best thing would be to hold a pillowcase over their dad's head and suffocate him. But get this, he fought back. Even as old and as sick as Anthony was, he was also surprisingly strong. Which I guess that when you're fighting for your life and adrenaline is pumping, you can do incredible and unexpected things. So from there, mary-beth and Linda decided to move to Plan C. And that is when they stuffed a washcloth down his throat so that he couldn't breathe through his mouth. Then one of them pinched his nose shut. They held him that way, not letting him get a single breath until he ultimately died. Then the next morning, they staged everything perfectly. The 2 of them showed up in the morning like they were there just checking on their dad and everything was normal. They pretended to find him on the couch, then called 911. And that was when Linda began doing chest compressions. Now, of course, she already knew that Anthony was long dead, but at least this way she would look like she was desperately trying to save his life when the paramedics arrived. I mean, they did everything perfectly, coming across like the devoted, loving daughters that the first responders thought that they were. But now that the evidence was out there, the truth was undeniable. So Linda and mary-beth both pleaded guilty. mary-beth took a plea deal where she agreed to testify against Linda, which was something that didn't end up happening since Linda also pleaded guilty and didn't have a trial. In 2021, Linda was sentenced to 20 years in prison while mary-beth got 15 years thanks to her agreement to testify against Linda. And I gotta say, it's kind of ironic when you think about it because Linda turned on mary-beth in the interrogation room and then mary-beth turned on her afterward. I don't know if I would call it karma necessarily. Maybe it was a case of like, I don't know, I'm going to get you back, but who knows? Still, it is so tragic to me that these women robbed their father of his right to a peaceful and gentle death. His last minutes were full of fear and pain as his daughters, who he loved, literally choked him to death. And I can't help but wonder how they felt about it afterward. You know, if the thought of him thrashing around and fighting back drove home the fact that this wasn't the mercy killing that they thought that it was going to be or claimed it would be. I know that Linda tried to make it sound like what they were doing was no different from when people get euthanasia, but it is different. Doctors who help people die in that way are professionals. They are experts. They know how to make it gentle and painless. What Linda and mary-beth did, it was just cruel. And cases like this are always extra shocking to me because Anthony wasn't killed by a random person off the street. He wasn't scammed by a con artist. He wasn't killed by a significant other who was violent or after his money. He was killed by his own flesh and blood. Anthony raised his killers, and everyone who knew him thought he did a great job of raising them and was a good person at heart. So it's beyond sad that his own daughters took matters into their own hands, no matter what their actual motives were. There's no excuse. There is some controversy I've seen out there, though, saying that they were just trying to do assisted end of life, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Like, I get it. When older people are at the end of their life, it is a lot to take care of them and be a full-time caretaker, certainly. But it does not warrant this. Absolutely not. So I am so happy that she just got cocky enough or whatever the feeling was to start talking and start yapping to where then these women monsters were able to be held accountable. Because had she not confided in Tony and told him what happened and him smart enough to get it on tape and record her, who knows if they ever would have been caught. I would guess probably not. They probably would have gotten away with it forever. And I'm really glad that that didn't happen. So thank you guys so much today for tuning in and hearing Anthony's story. And until the next one, stay safe. Bye.